Hi Zia, it's Granny. I'm going to read you a story. It's called Make Way for Ducklings. This is what the book looks like. Ready? I'm a little nervous. Okay, I'm going to start reading now. This is the first page. Mr. and Mrs. Mallard were looking for a place to live. But every time Mr. Mallard saw what looked like a nice place, Mrs. Mallard said it was no good. There were sure to be foxes in the woods or turtles in the water, and she was not going to raise a family where there might be foxes or turtles. So they flew on and on. Do you see them flying in the sky? Let me go into the next page. When they got to Boston, they felt too tired to fly any further. There was a nice pond in the public garden with a little island on it. I'll show you what that looks like. The very place to spend the night, quacked Mr. Mallard. So down they flapped. I'm turning the page. Here's the page that I'm on now. Next morning, they fished for their breakfast in the mud at the bottom of the pond, but they didn't find much. This is a funny picture because all you see are their rear ends up in the air and their heads are in the water. I guess they're looking for food, but they didn't find much. All right, next page. Just as they were getting ready to start on their way, a strange, enormous bird came by. It was pushing a boat full of people, and there was a man sitting on its back. "Good morning," quacked Mr. Mallard, being polite. The big bird was too proud to answer, but the people on the boat threw peanuts into the water. So the Mallards followed them all round the pond and got another breakfast, better than the first. I'm turning the page. "I like this place," said Mrs. Mallard as they climbed out on the bank and waddled along. "Why don't we build a nest and raise our ducklings right in this pond? There are no foxes and no turtles, and the people feed us peanuts. What could be better?" "Good," said Mr. Mallard, delighted that at last Mrs. Mallard had found a place that suited her. But, I'm turning the page. Oh, look what's on this page. Do you see a little boy on a bicycle? "Look out," squawked Mrs. Mallard, all of a dither. "You'll get run over." And when she got her breath, she added, "This is no place for babies, with all those horrid things rushing about. We'll have to look somewhere else." I turned the page, and now I'm on this page. Are you reading along with me, Zia? There's a lot of good pictures here. So they flew over Beacon Hill, round the State House, but there was no place there. Turning the page. Now I'm on this page. They looked in Louisburg Square, but there was no water to swim in. Turning the page. Then they flew over the Charles River. "This is better," quacked Mr. Mallard. "That island looks like a nice, quiet place, and it's only a little way from the public garden." "Yes," said Mrs. Mallard, remembering the peanuts. "That looks like just the right place to hatch ducklings." See, do you think that's going to be a good place for them? Let's find out. Okay, I turned the page. So they chose a cozy spot among the bushes near the water and settled down to build their nest. And only just in time, for now they were beginning to molt. All their old wing feathers started to drop out, and they would not be able to fly again until the new ones grew in. Next page. But of course they could swim, and one day they swam over to the park on the river bank, and there they met a policeman called Michael. Michael fed them peanuts, and after that the Mallards called on Michael every day. Turning the page. After Mrs. Mallard had laid 8 eggs in the nest, she couldn't go to visit Michael anymore because she had to sit on the eggs to keep them warm. She moved off the nest only to get a drink of water, or to have her lunch, or to count the eggs and make sure they were all there. Do you think they're all there? Next page. Let's see what's going to happen next. One day the ducklings hatched. First came Jack, then Cack, and then Lack, then Mack, and Knack, and Quack, and Pack, and Quack. Mr. and Mrs. Mallard were bursting with pride. It was a great responsibility taking care of so many ducklings, and it kept them busy. Look at all those little ducklings. Now I'm on this page. One day, Mr. Mallard decided he'd like to take a trip to see what the rest of the river was like further on. So off he set. "I'll meet you in a week in the public garden," he quacked over his shoulder. "Take good care of the ducklings." "Don't you worry," said Mrs. Mallard. "I know all about bringing up children." And she did. Next page. Oh, it looks like they're having fun here. She taught them how to swim and dive. Oh, they look so happy. Next page. She taught them to walk in a line, to come when they were called, and to keep a safe distance from bikes and scooters and other things with wheels. Next page. Oh, this looks like a picture of a big bridge. When at last she felt perfectly satisfied with them, she said one morning, "Come along, children, follow me." Before you could wink an eyelash, Jack, Knack, Lack, Mack, Knack, Whack, Pack, and Quack fell into line, just as they had been taught. Mrs. Mallard led the way into the water, and they swam behind her to the opposite bank. Oh, look, they're all in a line, swimming behind their mother. Next page. There they waded ashore and waddled along till they came to the highway. Ho-ho, look what's on this page. Mrs. Mallard stepped out to cross the road. Honk, honk, went the horns on the speeding cars. Quack, went Mrs. Mallard as she tumbled back again. Quack, 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 went Jack, cack, lack, mack, knack, whack, pack, and quack, just as loud as their little quackers could quack. The cars kept speeding by and honking, and Mrs. Mallard and the ducklings kept right on quack, quack, quacking. Can you quack, quack and make a lot of noise? Quack, quack, quack. That's what they're doing. Next page. Oh, what do you think's going to happen here? They made such a noise that Michael came running, waving his arms and blowing his whistle. Next page. Do you see what's going to happen? He planted himself in the center of the road, raised one hand to stop the traffic, and then beckoned with the other, the way policemen do, for Mrs. Mallard to cross over. Do you see Mrs. Mallard and all the little ducklings? They're going to cross the road. Ooh, what's going to happen on this page? As soon as Mrs. Mallard and the ducklings were safe on the other side and on their way down Mount Vernon Street, Michael rushed back to his police booth. Oh, he's really running. Turn the page. Looks like he's making a phone call. He called Clancy at headquarters and said, "There's a family of ducks walking down the street," Clancy said. "Family of what?" "Ducks," yelled Michael. "Send a police car, quick." Turn the page. Do you see all the little ducks walking down the sidewalk? Meanwhile, Mrs. Mallard had reached the corner bookshop and turned into Charles Street with Jack, Cack, Lack, Mack, Knack, Whack, Pack, and Quack, all marching in line behind her. Next page. Everyone stared. An old lady from Beacon Hill said, "Isn't it amazing?" And the man who swept the street said, "Well now, ain't that nice?" And when Mrs. Mallard heard them, she was so proud, she tipped her nose in the air and walked along with an extra swing in her waddle. Do you see Mrs. Mallard? She tipped her nose in the air. Next page. When they came to the corner of Beacon Street, there was the police car with 4 policemen that Clancy had sent from headquarters. The policemen held back the traffic so Mrs. Mallard and the ducklings could march across the street. Oh, now the next page, it looks like they crossed the street. And they're back in the park. Right on into the public garden. I like that picture. They're almost back home where they want to be. Next page. Inside the gate, they all turned round to say thank you to the policemen. The policemen smiled and waved goodbye. See the policemen smiling and waving goodbye? Next page. When they reached the pond and swam across the little island, there was Mr. Mallard waiting for them, just as he had promised. Do you see the island? And there's Mr. Mallard. He's waiting for his family. Next page. The ducklings liked the new island so much that they decided to live there. All day long, they follow the swan boats and eat peanuts. Next page. And when night falls, they swim to their little island and go to sleep. The end. I hope you like this story. I had fun reading it to you.